So we are very grateful to have Venerable Miao here today to share with us the great Master Xingyin through the eyes of his personal interpreter. Now let's everybody put our hands together to give her a warm welcome.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and Venerable Miao and all venerables at London for Guangshan. First of all, it is my honor to be back in London after 6 years since my previous visit to once again share the Dharma that I have learned throughout these years. And as introduced by Roxy, I am not sure if this will be an exciting talk, but I will try my best to share with you on today's topic, a great Buddhist master through the eyes of his personal interpreter. And I've done this talk a couple of times in Chinese as my attempt to introduce a great Buddhist master who founded not only London for Guangshan, but also many temples around the world. And so I hope that when you come back to this temple in the future, you might feel closer to the visions and accomplishments he has done throughout his entire life. I'm sure that most of you are no strangers to this name and to this face, and most of you, like me, have benefited greatly. Most of you have benefited greatly from his compassion and his vision. And so today I will choose to share my view of the Master as his personal English interpreter. Okay. So for those who may not know much about Venerable Master, I would like to begin with a basic historical background of this young Buddhist monk from mainland China. Okay. And so you might imagine this little boy who was born in a very poor rural village, where during the times of war, not only the Civil War in China, but also the Sino-Japanese War, and the Northern Expedition, and so on. So what happens if a boy grows up in a place like this, where his family could barely put food on his table? And every day you walk out, you see dead bodies lying outside your door. You see bullets flying across your door. Sometimes you're forced to hide amongst dead bodies in order to stay away from the gunfire. What would you turn out to be if you were a boy like this? And also, after he grew up from spending years in the Buddhist college, having arrived in Taiwan, no temple was willing to take him in. He was forced to sleep under the walls and the edges of the roofs of certain temples that refused to open their doors. He spent many years passing by, barely able to find enough food to eat. Okay. If you were in that situation, what would become of you 10 years later? Okay. So this is the way I would like to open my talk today, for us to see how a young boy went from such deprived conditions to being able to provide a home in so many ways to people around the globe, coming from so many backgrounds. And so, although he grew up in a poor rural village, he never felt poor at heart. He had the greatest wealth in his heart that was filled with compassion and kindness. And he also had many, many visions, even as a young Buddhist monk starting in Taiwan, already thinking about the need to provide a chance for people to learn, especially the Dharma, and also a chance for those who were deprived of a chance to receive education, to get a second opportunity to learn. Okay, so this was the young monk we see in his 20s, already involved in seminars, institutes, with this dream of spreading so-called humanistic Buddhism around at least Taiwan. And so that's how he began from Taiwan and started to build temples across the world. And so I would like to begin with my own story. As you see on the picture, this is me. I met him in Australia when I was in my early 20s. But I actually started to learn about Guang and I attended the temple activities just like our youngsters in the back. I was about 12 and I called myself a victim because my mother always woke me up on Sunday mornings so early so she could drive us to the temple to attend some chantings that I could never understand, which was conducted in Mandarin. But I was grateful for that moment because that was when my life started to take a sharp turn. So from as early as I could remember, when I grew up in Taiwan, that was during the 1970s, that was when Taiwan was experiencing the economic takeoff. So small and medium businesses were taking off. So therefore my dad established his own dental technician lab and the family was doing quite well financially. But mentally, my family didn't do too well because most of the time I could see my father angry and him fighting with my mom. And so during the weekends when I was out of school, my mom would always take me to different shrines and temples. It seems like she was searching for something, some kind of faith or some kind of solace. Okay? She would take me to these really dark Guanyin shrines with two dimly lit red lights. And then I would see her joining her palms and talking to Guanyin for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I don't know what she was praying for. Maybe it was for, like family prosperity and that her children would be less naughty. Whatever that was, I would remember every time she finished talking to Guanyin or Buddha, she would turn around with this great sense of relief and peace on her face. So the search journey continued onwards even until we went to Australia as a whole family. That was when I was about 12, in the late 1980s. And during those days, there was a boom with Asian immigrants who flooded into Australia with an average of 2 Taiwanese families per day. And so you might imagine there were so many families like ours, where the mother and the father barely spoke any English, and they had a dream of taking their children to a country that provided better living and education environments. Okay, but things were not that easy because she had to learn to drive. Okay, she had to learn to take us to school by checking up maps, to learn the directions. She had to learn to find the nearest supermarkets. And therefore all of these daily errands are probably enough to keep her busy. And you might imagine, I was 12, my brother was 13, and my sister was 15. Okay, very naughty. We annoyed the heaven out of her. And so we made her angry a lot of times. Okay. But fortunately, her anger stopped when she found Guang in Sydney. She found this little house, which was about half the size of this room. And then she came across a monastic who invited her to the temple to attend the weekend chantings. Okay, so from then on, I discovered that every Friday, my mom would kind of disappear for half a day and then come back with a big smile on her face. I didn't know what she was doing. And then she told us that the monastics actually discovered that she was a floral arrangement teacher. So they actually offered for her to come to the temple every weekend to make some flower arrangements to help adorn the temple. And I guess she enjoyed it. She enjoyed it so much that she ended up disappearing for whole Sundays. Up that. Okay? And so we will wake up not knowing where she is. And again, she comes back with this joy. And she says, I've been going to the temple to attend the chantings. You should come with me. And the three of us were like, yeah, sure. Right? And so that's how we ended up in the temples with a lot of other young boys and girls whom we will also refer to as victims, who will wake them up really early on Sunday morning and the parents will say, come. Right? They would take us to the temples and they put us in the Chinese schools, and then the parents would go off to do the chanting. So that's how we pretty much spend our Sundays. Sounds familiar? Yeah. So boys and girls, if you love it, good for you. If you're not sure why you're here, maybe in a few years you start to appreciate your time here. You really, really start to enjoy the friendship and the solace that you find in a temple like this, with all these smiles. Okay? And so as days went by, I actually never really took religious faith to heart. It wasn't much. I really basically went to the temples just for the friendship. So I could play with the young boys and children outside, just like, as we saw today. And then it was until the year when I finished my high school entrance exam. That was the final day of my exam. And so as soon as I went home, I threw out all the books in my room, emptied my floor that was covered with exam papers and books. And I bought this box of 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. I poured it all over my floor and I said, okay, I'm going to blank out for 2 weeks. I'm not going to do anything. So as I was about to get down on the floor, my mom came into my room and says, I've registered you for the children's happy camp at Nantian Temple. So you need to pack your bag tomorrow and go. Yeah. So I turned to my mom and said, Mom, children's camp? I'm 18. She said, it's okay, you like it there, so just go ahead. And so being an obedient daughter, I packed my bag on the next day and I caught the train, went up to Nantian Temple, just 1 hour outside of Sydney. And I arrived with about 30 other boys and girls, ranging from age 8 to about 18. Okay? And so as we sat down, these monastics started to talk to us about what Dharma is. Okay? And so this particular monastic began to tell us about a story about the turtle and the scorpion. The basic story was about how the scorpion wanted to cross the river, so it begged the turtle to carry it. But turtle didn't want to, right? Because it says, you're going to sting me and I'm going to die. So that was the story. But we discovered that 5 minutes into the story, something started to went horribly wrong. That was half of the children stared at this monastic with their mouth open. They didn't understand Mandarin. Okay, sounds familiar? Yeah. And so this venerable, whose name was Venerable Manchen, started to look into the audience. Because, okay, you don't speak Mandarin, so I guess we need English interpretation. Who would like to translate for me? Okay. But I had very, very bad English grades back then. I was a slow learner, and I was very shy, and I was never willing to express myself. So as soon as I heard that, I was sitting at my table with my hands underneath my chin. So when she said, who would like to translate for me? My immediate action was, I tried to hide my face behind my fist. And I guess she was quite receptive. She goes, you raised your hand? Come, translate for me. Here's a microphone. Yeah. So I learned my lesson to never raise my hand halfway upwards. Yeah. And so, not knowing how to refuse, I kind of, forced myself to walk up to the front to pick up the microphone. But whatever she said for the rest of that session, I ended up translating everything with 2 words. One is, the other was, sorry. And so she tried to remain her composure. You could see she was a bit annoyed, but she maintained her smile, and she completed the whole story. And then at the end of the session, she came, started to walk towards me. And so I began to get really scared. I wasn't sure what she was going to say, and it looked like she was going to yell at me. Okay? But she came close to me and goes, you did a really good job. So I turned to her and said, thank you, Venerable. And in my mind was like, yeah, sure, liar. But you might imagine that was the moment when my life changed again. Because what I sensed at that moment was the compassion and kindness of a Buddhist nun who was willing to give me a chance. So you might imagine if on that day she scolded me for doing such a terrible job, right? Why is your English so bad? You should do better. Then I may never pick up the microphone again. And so for the rest of the children's camp, she handed the mic to me every time she gave a lesson. And so I improved from 2 words to a couple more. And maybe towards the end of the children's camp, I discovered that I was able to deliver a lot of her messages in a second language. And people were coming up to me to say thank you. Thank you, so I'm not walking away from this experience not knowing anything. I think that was what matters. And so for the first time of my life, having grown up being the less achieved child in a family, where most of the time I was neglected, suddenly people are coming up to me to say thank you to me for something that I could do. Okay? And that was quite an amazing experience. It made me think about what ability actually really means. Ability probably doesn't mean your capability. But it comes with your willingness to give it a try and keep trying until you get better. Okay? So after the children's camp, I stayed on and I continued to volunteer at the temple for another 2 weeks. Okay? But the first job they gave me wasn't translation. They put me in the kitchen. I was peeling carrots. They gave me bags and bags of carrots and I just peeled and peeled and peeled. And after I finished, they would go, oh, go over there to wash the bowls. So I washed the bowls. And after I finished washing the bowls, they would say, go to the dining hall to serve food. And after I served food, they would go, oh, go clean out the toilet. And so I did everything as I was told. And I guess in being willing to try everything, they started to trust me and believe that I can do a lot more. Okay. And so coming up to this point, I would really like to share my lesson from this experience. That is, no experiences will ever go in vain. So any conditions that you come across in life is a chance for you to become better. And any moment you hold on to that opportunity to become better, your life starts to turn and your life becomes bigger. And so after those 2 weeks, I went home, and throughout the rest of the 4 years of my university days, whenever I was free, I would come to the temple. Whenever I had nothing to do, I would come to the temple. But from then on, they handed me 2 dictionaries. One, it was on Buddhist terms. The other was an English dictionary. And so I started to try all kinds of translations at the temple. Whether it was knowledge about the temple, or maybe articles by Venerable Master, or maybe just some general news pieces about the events that went on at the temple. So I translated anything they handed to me. And I believe I started to improve my English in many ways, because they even brought in an English teacher to help correct my translations. And I humbly accepted all of her corrections. And so that was actually the moment when I felt like my English improved the most. Otherwise, it was actually quite terrible. Okay. And so as I improved, I guess another turning point came when Venerable Manchen suddenly looked at me for like 30 seconds for a day. I'm thinking, is there something on my face, right? And she goes, oh, you have improved a lot, so you keep working. One day you might have an opportunity to translate for Venerable Master Xing Yun. And again, I looked at her, I smiled, and went, haha, sure. No way, yeah, liar. Yeah. Thanks for the encouragement. Okay. But I went home thinking about all of these, and I pulled out this set of audiobooks by Venerable Master Xing Yun, 有情有义有声书. This was a 50 cassette tape set based on the 100 Saying series written by him. And I listened to every single tape while reading the book that came with the audiobook. And so by the time I was about to graduate from university, Venerable Master Xing Yun came, and he gave a talk, and I managed to do an okay translation. Okay. And so I guess Venerable Manchen was quite satisfied, so she decided to introduce me to this master. And the first thing he said to me when I sat down was, how can you understand my accent? Because he spoke with a very heavy Yangzhou accent that was far from Mandarin. And at that moment, I wasn't sure how to reply. But as days went by, I realized maybe it came from those moments when I sat down to listen to his tapes and read his books. Therefore, this master was no stranger to me. I was very familiar with the works he gave to me. Okay. And so I guess it paid off, not being a bright child in the family. When nobody had expectations in you, you're being left in a corner to do whatever you wanted to do. But being able to focus and try hard, suddenly I felt like I had a direction in life. Okay. And so as I was about to graduate from university, I was truly contemplating my path. Okay. But when the question of whether I should become renounced came up, my immediate response was, no way. Why? I'm yet to travel the world, right? I'm yet to experience life. Maybe I should get older before I become renounced. Okay? But I guess not having spent another week thinking about this, I had time to contemplate my chances of traveling the world, getting a good job, especially with my interpretation skills that would build up at the temple. I believed that I would get a pretty good job that had a good pay. Okay? But in the end, I asked myself, what is the goal of my life? What would I like to do? Was it just to make my own life comfortable? to make sure that I'm a well-achieved person, that I can provide for my parents, and that's it? Or should I make a greater difference with this ability that was given to me by a greater community that came from different parts of the world that encouraged me on every day? Okay. So I looked myself up for a week, thought about this, and then I finally decided to become renounced. Okay. And very fortunate, on the day I decided, they also received a phone call from Venerable Master. He says, if you have a group of people who are willing to become renounced, I'm happy to come and conduct this ceremony for them. Up till then, in year 2000, he had never actually went overseas to conduct a Tengshur ceremony until he came to Nantian Temple. Okay. And so I believe I have a lot of great blessings by this family, and sometimes these opportunities really come to you if you are willing to contribute or to share any blessings that you have with the rest of the world. And so I always share with our young friends, when you come to the temple, don't feel bad that while you're volunteering all your time, all the rest of your friends are out there having fun and achieving their things in their career. Because as long as you're willing to contribute yourself, the Bodhisattvas will never turn their back to you. They will always be there for you. So this is my personal experience. Okay? But having said that, although it was my mother who brought me to the temple, my dad was not much of a Buddhist. He did not really accept the values of Buddhism, and he thought we were all being superstitious and brainwashed. Because he was never involved in the temple works. Okay, so you might imagine when I made up that decision, how difficult it would have been to convince him. He actually was quite against me and my mom going to the temple all the time, and sometimes when we stayed longer, he maybe reacted much more violently. Okay? For example, he would threaten to throw out our shrines, Buddha shrine at home. And so, for many years I've thought about how to really connect my father with the Dharma, and never with much progress, until the day when I decided to become renounced. I sat at Nantian Temple and I thought about, how am I going to convince my dad? Okay? And then Master Xingyun, sitting nearby, suddenly turned to me and said, okay, you can invite your mom and dad to the temple for the Chinese New Year. Okay? So I thought, sure, why not? Maybe when they come, I have a team on my side. There will be more people who are willing to help me convince my father. And so when he came, Master Xingyun set us down along with 6 other monastics with their families. 6 other ladies were about to become renounced. So we sat down in a living room. As soon as we sat down, Master Xingyun turned to my dad and immediately cut to the chase and said, did you know that your daughter wants to become renounced? And I turned to him and I went, wow, that's fast. Okay? And I looked at my dad. My dad suddenly stopped and he didn't know how to respond. So he quietened down. He started to look downwards. He didn't say a word. And therefore, Venerable Manchen and many of the elders at Guang began to try to defend me, try to persuade my dad about how I would have a greater future at Guang. Okay? And so after 3 rounds of persuasion, I turned to my dad, a man who left his family at 19, started a company all on his own without any support from my grandfather, and brought us to Australia, supported the family despite the difficult situations. A man who did all of this, who never as much shed a tear, suddenly at that moment broke down into tears. He just cried. Okay? And I was in such shock because I didn't know how to respond to my dad. So I held onto his hand and I tried to calm him down. And so at the end of the meeting, I guess he was not very happy. Therefore, even though I invited him to go and have dinner and listen to the Master Xingyun's Dharma talk, he immediately drove home, okay, which was about an hour away. Okay. And on the next morning at about 5 o'clock, my mother gave me a call and said, oh, you better come home. Your dad didn't sleep for a whole night and he cried for the whole night, so you should come back and convince him. You have to really make peace and help him accept it. And so which it made sense. And therefore, I said to the master, okay, I guess I need to go home, to really explain everything to my dad. And so the master looked at me and says, yes, indeed, you should go home. It's your responsibility to make your dad understand. Here, take the temple car. And I'm going to share another story with you. There was a monastic who wished to become renounced, was also rejected. So her family locked her up. But she actually ripped up all the bed sheets, turned it into a rope, and escaped through the window. Okay. There's another story of a monastic who hid a blade underneath her sock, to show her determination that if her family didn't say yes to her, to agree to her will to renounce, she might give up her life. Okay, so having listened to these two stories, I said to Master, thank you, Master, I understand. Don't worry, I'll be back. Yeah, so driving home, with an uneasy heart, I thought about how I would be able to talk to my dad. So to cut the story short, the conversation was unsuccessful. He got so angry. He says, all I've ever wanted of you is for you to lead a normal life. And so I asked him, what do you mean by a normal life? A normal life is for you to graduate from university. Yes, I did. Okay. Then get married and have children and lead a normal life. But I turned to him and I said, but being married, you never seemed happy as a married man. And your children annoy the heaven out of you. So what is good about that? And he continued by saying, I don't care. So, my bottom line is for you to never become renounced. If you do, I'm going to sever my connection with you and I'm going to divorce your mom. And then I turned to him and I said, Dad, think about this. You have never cooked in your whole life. You have never even done your laundry one single time in your whole life. What's going to happen if you divorce Mom? And then he stopped. He didn't say anything else. Right? And so by the end of that conversation, I told my dad that I really hoped that I could have his blessings, that he would let me take my chosen path. And then I went back to Nantian Temple. And so a week later, when the renunciation ceremony took place, only my mother was there to support me. The rest of the family was quite angry at me. They thought I was very unfilial. I was an undutiful daughter for not fulfilling my father's wish. Okay? So the condition remained so for another 2 or 3 years, where my dad refused to talk to me. When I tried to call him, these phone calls became unsuccessful because I guess sometimes I became a coward and I hung up before he even decided to come to the phone. Yeah, but throughout all these years, my mom told me to continue to dedicate every merit that I have accumulated to my dad, so that one day he may feel a peace of mind, given by the Buddha's blessings. So that's what I did. Okay? And I'm going to leave the story about my dad aside for a little while and go back to my experience after becoming renounced and turning into the personal interpreter of Venerable Master Xing Yun. Okay? And I feel that after that struggle with my dad, my determination was strengthened a lot, because I realized that I had come, it hasn't been an easy path coming along, coming up to where I am today. And so I should definitely cherish my opportunities. And therefore, cherishing these opportunities, this master, a giant who lended his shoulder to me so I could see the world, so I could see a future for Buddhism, indeed showed me a great, great world. Okay? And so I would like to share some stories about how he educated us as monastics. Okay? As you look at this Buddhist master, this photo was about when he was around the age of 80. Okay? And he grew up through strict monastic education. Therefore, he paid extra attention to his demeanors. Even at age 85 and 90, every time he appeared in front of a crowd, he was always properly dressed. He always stood straight, upright, and he always made sincere eye contact with anyone who crossed his path with him. So this was how he educated his monastics as the very first step. Therefore, you might discover any Foguangshan monastic you come across may bear a similar demeanor. Right? Sometimes I would walk on the streets of different parts of the world, and people will come and ask me, "Oh, are you from Foguangshan?" And usually I would think, okay, I don't have Foguangshan written on my forehead. How do you know? Right? She goes, "Oh, it's the way you present yourselves." And so I would say that was probably how he taught us. Okay. But at a young age, it's easy for you to maintain a good demeanor, keep your body straight, right? Always present yourself in good spirit. But what happens when you turn almost 80? Under the severe complications of diabetes, you now have lost 90% of your vision. And having broken your leg once and through many surgeries, you are still not able to sense many sensations in your legs. Therefore, standing up may be a very difficult job for you. What happens in that case when you are still in the position of leading the world towards a better spiritual world? He forged ahead. He tried his every effort in always maintaining that. That's how we see how he kept up his spirit. Okay? And so one of the most recent experiences was when I traveled to Boao, which is in southern China, in 2015. Okay, this was when he was 92. You might imagine he can no longer walk more than 10 steps. And standing up for 2 minutes was already too much for him. Because he's quite tall and he had a very strong body. And if we were to help him up, there needed to be about at least 2 of us, someone of my size. Okay? And so having that body weight and very few strength in his legs, at Boao, this was what happened. He received the invitation to take a photo with all the national leaders, the presidents and the prime ministers at the Boao Forum. This was a forum where these leaders of different parts of the world came together to discuss future policies. And so it was quite rare for a Buddhist monk to be invited into that photo shooting. Okay? And therefore on that day you could see, since these were all presidents and prime ministers, so security was quite high. There was a high level of security, and therefore as we proceeded towards this venue, we got stopped at least 3 times. And at each stop, many of the members had to drop behind. And so upon final negotiation, it was me as the interpreter and Venerable Hui Kuan, who could help push his wheelchair, who were allowed to enter the very final room. Okay, we went through 3 levels of security, and when we entered the final room, Venerable Hui Kuan and I almost fainted. Why? Because as soon as we entered the door, this is what you see, but 15 meters away from the staircases, they pulled up all these ropes, so no one else was allowed to go in. And therefore we tried to negotiate with the security, telling him that our master needs support because he cannot stand up. But they just wouldn't listen. They said no means no. You're going to have to make do. And therefore the master told us, don't worry, just take me to my place. I will try to support myself. Okay? And so we took him to his place, and then the security ushered us outside behind the red ropes and said, don't come any closer. Okay? Otherwise we'll have to kick you out. Okay? And so we left the Venerable Master there. And you might discover that if you're closer to the center, that means the later you actually would come into the photo shoot. And so he was among one of the earliest guests to be ready at the venue. And so the basic time that he needed to remain standing was almost 15 minutes. For someone who wasn't able to stand up for a minute. And so Venerable Hui Kuan and I were standing there, getting ready, being ready with the wheelchair so that any time should he fall down, then we'll be there as soon as possible. But you will see with him with his walking stick and his wailing body, every once in a while you will see when he lost strength in his legs, he would kind of just tilt backwards. And then the 2 of us would try to lean forward, trying to reach out to him. Okay? And somehow, we managed to make it through that session. Okay, so the photo shooting took place. He shook hands with President Xi and the many leaders of the world. And then as soon as the red robes are dropped, we rushed to him. And then he almost fell into the wheelchair. Okay? But when he fell into the wheelchair, this was his first question. Okay, how did I do? Was I standing up straight enough? Yeah. That's what he cared about. Okay? And so for the rest of the day, we took him back to the hotel, and we discovered that he seemed to have lost all his strength. He couldn't really stand up anymore. He was just sinking into the chair because he used every last bit of strength to remain standing. So this photo you see in front of you could be presented. Okay? Why? We have to ask the question, why? Okay. He turned to us and said, okay, I did all of this today for the sake of Buddhism. Why? Because if this photo gets shared around China, we will have greater chances to share the Dharma with the 13 billion people, 1.3 billion people of the people in China. And you might imagine how many more lives could be changed with the wisdom of Dharma. That's why I'm willing to give it a try. Right? And so that's how we saw a Buddhist master. He exerted his strength to actually bring greater connections to the people so they can perhaps live a better life under the guidance of Buddhism. That was his attempt. And indeed, when these photos were spread around, many more chances opened up for our temples in mainland China. And so he indeed has a great influence. Okay? And so you might imagine a Buddhist master who has spent 30 years building temples around the world, educating and guiding his devotees. Everywhere he goes, these were the kinds of events that I faced as well. So we had this tremendous blessing to really stand by him and to watch people from different parts of the world coming and to receive the blessing of the Buddha, either through refuge ceremonies, through Dharma talks. And then again, I saw something that I saw on my mother's face ever since I was young. That moment of relief and joy at the end of every session. And so this is what the master wants to do for anyone who crosses paths with him. Okay? And in the process, I also had many chances to stand beside him and meet with the religious leaders of the world. And it's quite fun and interesting to see how every event turned out. Okay? This was in 2006. My first ever trip to Europe. I was so excited. I was looking forward to seeing so many things, but I ended up seeing only the hotel and airport. Why? Because for the rest of the time I had to follow him to visit the priest, the bishops, and maybe the leaders, talking, guiding, and discussing. Okay, so this was on the St. Peter's Square, in front of St. Peter's Church. So on that day when we were told that there was an arrangement for Master to meet with the Pope, we had thought that it would be a room like this, where they would receive him, usher him in, and seat him in a comfortable chair. But that wasn't the story. Again, with limited seating available, I was the only one who was able to accompany him with this book, 云水三千, as you can see. Cloud and Water, which was like a 5-kilogram book that I had to carry in one hand and guide my master with my other hand. And the place they took us to was, you might imagine, they were doing a misa on that day on St. Peter's Square. And so in the center stage, there was the Pope. And they took us to a little outdoor seating amongst the crowd right beside the stage. Okay? And there was no chair. And it was a very, very hot June weather day. And so we've got the sun above our head and the crowd around us who started to stir up when the Pope came towards us. So you might imagine all these people going crazy, going, oh, the Pope, the Pope. And they were rushing forward, pushing people, getting people out of their way so they can come as close to the Pope as possible. And so I was trying to support my master with that book in my hand, and someone very kindly handed me another umbrella so I could block the sun. So you could see how awkward I was, trying to do 3 things at the same time. With these people pushing forward, so I gently kind of just reached out my arm, just signifying to them, signaling to them that, okay, don't come any closer, otherwise he might fall. So that was the kind of situation. He had to stand there for half an hour until the Pope finally came upon us. And the conversation went easy. Okay? It was a very short one. And what Master Xing Yun basically said to the Pope is that we, the people at Guang, admire you very much. We thank the Catholics for contributing so much to Taiwan, building schools and hospitals. We hope that you may come to Taiwan so we can return the hospitality. And then ended the conversation after half an hour under the sun. Right? And I was really, really, really angry because I did not see this as a proper way to receive an international guest. Okay? But I guess my master sensed my anger. He turned to me and says, don't worry. As long as it's for Buddhism, it's okay. Yeah. And so suddenly at that moment, I felt as if this heavy weight just lifted off my chest, and I felt much better. So that was how he was willing to sacrifice and make do in all difficult circumstances in order to extend the connections for the kind of faith we're following today. Okay. And next, I would like to share about his spirit of equality. In 2011, at almost about 8 o'clock, between 8 and 9, 2 airplanes crashed into the Twin Towers in New York and Manhattan, okay, killing 3,000 lives and disrupted the normal life of many people around the world. Okay. And as that happened, we were about 3 months into planning our Buddhist hymn choir tour around America. And so on that morning, all these calls flew in, telling Venerable Master one thing: it's very dangerous in New York, so please don't come. Right? And then we started to wonder if, what happens if this plan is cancelled? How should we make further arrangements? But he never as much uttered a word. He stayed quiet when all these calls came in. Okay? And then in the end, he told us one thing: why shouldn't we go? It is exactly at this moment of danger and fear that we need to bring comfort to the hearts of many people. Therefore, we must not cancel. Okay? And so, under the objections of many, many disciples, he still insisted that the Buddhist choir went to New York to pray for the people there. Okay? And so on the day we actually flew into Manhattan, the pilot made an effort to actually circle above ground zero so we could see what was going on. So this was the sight that I saw. 1 month after the building collapsed, metals were still burning, and you could still hear the screeching sounds, of everything that was jumbled up in the debris. Okay? And so as you approach the ground, you started to have this very heavy feeling because you don't know what's going to happen in there. And all the policemen were very, very cautious. You can see that there was this really high sense of, nervousness, this tension that lied around the ground. Okay? And so we went in there, and we had about a group of 20 Buddhist monastics who, lined up facing ground zero and started to do a chant. Okay? And what followed a chant would be a prayer. So if you have heard a prayer at the Guang Temple, how does it usually begin? O great compassionate Buddha. And therefore, as the translator, I braced myself for the translation, thinking that would be the opening. But instead, when Venerable Master read out the prayer, he said, "Dear Buddha, dear Jesus, dear Allah, dear Muhammad, and dear Buddha." Dear God, dear Jesus, dear Allah, dear Muhammad, and dear Buddha. He put Buddha last. He says, "May you bring peace to the hearts of your people. To those who had lost their lives in fear, may they find comfort in your garden and in your heaven and in your pure land." Okay. I was a bit surprised because I thought to myself, aren't we Buddhists? I thought we were supposed to be here to read a Buddhist prayer. Okay. But that was what he said. And I discovered that immediately after he said that opening, all of these police officers around who were originally looking at us with their arms crossed like this, okay, as soon as Venerable Master read that opening, they suddenly dropped their hands and started to come towards us. Catholics, Muslims, Christians, and having watched us finish that prayer, many of them came up to the Venerable Master. Oops, photo's gone. Okay, they actually joined their palms and lowered their heads so Master could sprinkle blessed water over them so they could have a piece of solace. Okay. And then at the end, I guess the privilege of kind of standing behind him with a confused look is that he's always ready to tend to my confusions. And therefore, after the prayer, he again turned to me and says, our goal here is to bring peace to the minds. Our goal here is not to promote Buddhism. That's what matters. When there is fear, you bring peace. When there are doubts, you bring wisdom and Dharma. Okay? When there is chaos, you bring harmony. If you can do that, you are already delivering the messages of Dharma. Okay? And so that was a very powerful experience as well, as we think of these moments of crisis. Right? These religious leaders are in fact very amazing in being able to bring that sense of solace to every wounded heart. And I was indeed very joyful and lucky to witness that in person. Okay? And so therefore his journey continued onwards. Okay? For those who come from the mainland and maybe Hong Kong and Taiwan, you may be familiar with this ever-going romance between the two shores of the Taiwan Strait. This continuing chaos over whether Taiwan is a part of China or not. Okay? But no matter what the answers would be, I think what matters right now is peace. And therefore, the master also feels the importance of maintaining that peace by enhancing greater exchanges. So therefore, in the year 2005 or 6, I can't remember correctly, the Chinese government initiated an event called the Buddhist Forum. And they actually told him that, yes, you should come and spread some messages of peace. Okay? And he was looking forward to that because that was a very rare opportunity for the Chinese government to open up the stage to a Taiwanese Buddhist monk. But unfortunately, just about a month before the forum, he fell in his bathroom and broke 2 ribs. Okay? So for those who have that experience, you might know how painful that is. Okay? And so as soon as he broke his ribs, again, objections started to rise and say, oh, master, you shouldn't go to China. Don't go to the forum. Your body is not in the condition, and so on. Okay? And so we heard about 3 or 4 or 5 suggestions were all about convincing him, talking him out of going. And again, he didn't say anything. He just sat there and let everybody finish their talk. And then, suddenly, after having heard everyone, he tried to get up and he started to take a stroll around the room with 2 broken ribs. How is that possible? When you have a broken rib, you can't even sit up. It's so painful, you have to lie down for 2 months. But immediately, about a week after that, he started to take a stroll around the room after all these objections. Why? He wanted to tell his disciples that I am okay, I can move, so let me go. And so I guess the elders at Guang understood his intention and they didn't say any more words. Therefore, a month later, he healed to a certain degree and then he went to Hangzhou and delivered a speech on stage. What he wanted to do, again, was only to remind Buddhists that, we from different parts of the strait are only here for one thing, that is peace. Okay, but that was the price he had to pay. Okay. And I might skip over this part. I would like now to talk about his amazing example of diligence. Okay, so again, I am a late comer to Fo Guangshan, so by the time I renounced, he was already close to the age of 80. And therefore, those were the years when he experienced all these complications of diabetes. And his hands shook violently whenever he was tired. And so upon 2006, when he finally came to the conclusion that his eyes could no longer be healed, his visions will never return. He had about 15% of his vision left by then. He couldn't read anymore. He was a bookworm. He read almost when he was free. But now imagine when you're taken away the ability to read, what would you do? We tried everything. We gave him huge magnifying glasses. We gave him different machines. And, you put the books under these machines so it would actually be projected onto the wall. But none of those worked. And therefore, by the end, he says, it's okay. I have seen enough in my life. I don't mind if I stop seeing. And therefore, he turned to writing. Okay. So again, imagine when you only have 15% of your vision left, when you're trying to write large pieces of calligraphy that you see around you, how do you determine the location? How do you determine how much space you need to use up? For a start, we tried to print out large black circles so he could see the shades of circles with 3 characters and 4 characters. Therefore, he knew where to land his brush. But eventually, the sight worsened. He wasn't able to see those rings anymore. And so one of the attendants picked up this huge stick and basically just pointed to a spot on the paper, telling him, this is where you start. But once you start, make sure your strokes are continuous. Otherwise, once disrupted, you may not be able to continue the piece. And therefore, that's how he wrote. Whenever he was writing, he had one of our semi-monastics, a sugu, sitting next to him, like churning out the ink, exchanging the pens. And we have two disciples across from him laying out the paper and helping him to pull the paper whenever he finished writing a character. So his hands could stay in one position, and the papers would just slide across the pen as he wrote. Okay, two. And another two sitting beside, reading out different verses or phrases, suggesting that maybe this is what you could write. Okay. And another two behind him, so that when these pieces were finished, they would pick it up, place it on the mat nearby so it could dry. Okay. So this is how much work is involved when you see one piece of one-stroke calligraphy being completed. He started writing in 2007. Every morning for 100 pieces, every afternoon for 100 pieces, every evening if he had time, every day, every week, throughout the year, up until last September. He never stopped. Okay. That was the kind of diligence you would see in a master. So you would see, it's not that simple. You may say he's an enlightened man, but look at his mouth. You could see the concentration and determination, to really complete a good piece. Okay. That's how he wrote. And sometimes he had to stand up in public demonstrations, but he always obliged, because he realized that one single piece written can carry the Dharma so much further as the form of Chinese culture. Okay? And so therefore, you see this man sitting in a wheelchair, who is no longer able to see, who writes tens and thousands of pieces of calligraphy and to connect with people. Okay? And these calligraphies connect in very amazing ways. For example, they're so simple. Okay? One of these devotees was very worried about his business. So every morning, the first thing he thought of would be how his company is doing. Okay? And even while after he returns home, he's still returning messages, right? Typing out plans and so on. Until one day, his factory was burned down to the very end. Okay? He was so upset until he went back to his home and he saw these two words, 放下, which means let go. And then suddenly, he felt okay. He realized that these two simple words told him that there's no need to hold on to what you have already lost. Just look straight ahead of you, look into the future. Don't hold on to the past. And so two simple words written by an almost blind Buddhist monk relieved the mind of a man who had to support a whole company. And eventually he found the strength to continue on, to make new starts. And so another story would be this one. It says, every day is a good day, every place is a good place, every person is a good person, every matter is a good matter. Okay. That reminds us to keep a positive mind, a mindset that no matter what you come across, remember, life is in your own hands. You have the power to turn every condition into something that helps you better your life. So again, every day is a good day, every place is a good place, every person is a good person, and every matter is a good matter. Okay. When we bear that in mind, we pull that out as a reminder, you might discover that's exactly how the Dharma teaches us to purify our minds. Right? By purifying, it means we let go of our attachments and delusions, as well as negative emotions. But we are ordinary beings. We need guidance and practice. And therefore, words as simple as this serve as a reminder in every moment when we start to think negativity. He says, no, it's okay. Remember, look straight ahead. Life is still so much more better. Okay? And this one I like particularly, 我是佛, I am a Buddha. If you have attended a refuge ceremony at a Guang temple conducted by a venerable master, you might remember he would always tell you, repeat after me, I am a Buddha. Right? I am a Buddha now, so I shouldn't get angry. I am a Buddha now, so I shouldn't smoke or drink alcohol that might harm my body. Right? And personally, I really benefited from these three words because I remember 2 years ago when I was organizing this 15,000 people event, I hadn't slept for 2 days, and I was really working on the handbook, sitting beside my graphic designer. Suddenly I got a call telling me that Venerable Master is going to teach a lesson that I needed to go to translate. Okay. Now, having not slept for 2 days, my brain was all jumbled up. It was almost impossible. And so I told this graphic designer that, okay, I'm going to disappear for an hour. I think I need to let my mind rest so I could do a good job. Okay. But you keep going. If you need anything, give me a call, because we knew that the handbook was in such a great rush to be finished. But unfortunately, I left without realizing that I hadn't given her the most important piece of information. So for that hour, she was sitting there trying to call me, waiting for me to bring her the information. So you might imagine she hadn't slept for 2 days either, so you could imagine how grumpy she was. Therefore, by the time I returned, she pointed me in the nose and saying, "How dare you? How do you find the face to go and sleep while I'm sitting here slaving away?" I was so shocked, because usually in a Buddhist temple, we don't really talk to each other this way. And I felt a little insulted as well. But I tried to hold back my anger. I gave her the information and went on to the venue to start interpreting. But carrying that anger into the venue, it had this tremendous influence on me. I was very negative. I couldn't focus. Every time Master spoke, as I was translating in my mind, this other half of my brain was saying, she was terrible. What a terrible young woman. I need to educate her. Yeah. And so he would say something, I would translate in my mind. I said, I feel very wrong. This is not right. And then suddenly he says, the Venerable Master says, okay, I need you guys to repeat after me. 我是佛, I am a Buddha. So I said it, and as soon as I translated, I am a Buddha, I made a decision in my mind, once I'm done, I'm going to go teach her a lesson. And then Master turned to me and continued to talk to the audience and saying that, you already said you're a Buddha, why would you get angry? And so at that moment, I almost laughed out loud. Again, this heavy weight just lifted off my chest. Yes, indeed, when we all try to practice as a future Buddha, what we learn is to let go of our anger and not to hold on to the grudges. So that was the effect of these 3 words on me, I am a Buddha. So I would say these are not jargons that you see around you. They're not slogans. They're not mere talks. These are wonderful talks that can guide you across the walk in a very joyful and solid way possible. So don't hold on to the very mysterious teachings of the Dharma. Rather, hold on to the solid and real parts of the Dharma so you feel real as an ordinary being. That is why he's writing all this one-stroke calligraphy as we see today. And the next thing I would like to share with you is how he built the Buddha Museum. This land covers about 100 hectares. It's about as large as Guang, which he took 40 years to complete building. He did all of this in 2 years. Also, close to the year when he was pretty much confined to a wheelchair, he had lost his sight. But for all of those who have been to the Buddha Museum, you might discover what a comfortable environment it is when you walk in. You never get tired walking around it. And in the hot, scorching weather of Kaohsiung, you never felt hot. You were always under a shade. And there was always enough water and refreshments within reach when you're tired and hot. And so all of this convenience was designed by him. Where he visited this place, this is what it looked like. It was almost like a wasteland, and there was no flat land. And so the attendants had to push him across all of these really, really rough lands every morning, every noon, every afternoon, and sometimes every sunset. He wanted to make sure that when he visited these places, he had to make sure that no matter what time it is, no matter where you are within the Buddha Museum, you are always comfortable. And he wanted to make sure that the right place with the right lighting was given the right facility. For example, under what places should we build a pavilion? Where should we lay out a display of arts so visitors can appreciate these works comfortably? And so I would say, bravo to the attendants who had to push the wheelchairs, because it was actually really, really difficult, and we would always be covered in mud. But he didn't mind. Okay? And so always taking into consideration, so you see, at the end he told us that you don't have to be an architect. You don't have to be an artist. You don't have to be a visionary. All you need to do is to always bear in mind what other people may need. Then you can create a wonderful home for whoever crosses paths with you. Okay. That's how he built the museum. And we are running out of time, so I'm going to quickly also talk about how he changed lives. Okay. So as an education visionary, he always thought about how to provide more opportunities. Therefore, in South Africa, you would see, apparently, statistics has it that in South Africa, out of every 5 women, 2 will be without a job after they enter university, and 1 will have the chance to go to university but maybe only make it halfway through, and 1 will be able to complete university, okay? And the other one may go on and get married. So in other words, 2 out of 3 women will have nothing to do during their university ages. And so therefore, at Nanhua Temple in South Africa, they designed this, what we call Tianlong Dui, the Heavenly Dragon Dance Team, to teach these ladies some extra performance skills. For example, rollerblading, and also how to do a dragon dance, and maybe a bit of Dunhuang dance. And we share a lot of opportunities with them, telling them, yes, when you learn to rollerblade, don't be afraid when you fall. Because when you fall, these will be the moments when you learn to pick yourself up again. Okay? And so, although a lot of the ladies gave up, but in the end, there were about 20 or 30 ladies who stayed on with the program, and now they have an opportunity to travel the world and to share their talents with the rest of the world. Okay? So we're doing every little bit that we can to help whoever comes into the temple. So at Nanhua, there are also computer program lessons. So those who come to attend the lesson, they will learn the skills of computing, maybe get a certificate for Microsoft, and maybe others, so they can go on to perhaps get an office work or job or something. And this is in Brazil. Okay. The Templo Zulai, which is our branch temple in Brazil, is built next to the slums. And you know that no one, not even the Brazilians, dared to go into the slums without protection. Because people in there had guns, they were dealing drugs, there was prostitution, and all these works. Okay? But what we did at Templo Zulai instead was to begin this program where we talk to the parents and say, okay, instead of sending them out there to do factory work, why don't you let them come to our temple, learn how to bake, learn how to make pizza, learn how to play soccer. So they gain a skill. Okay? And in exchange, we're going to give the child $100 per week along with a basket of rice and food. So you don't have to worry about your daily necessities. Okay? And so now about 15 of them have grown up, proceeded on to university in Taiwan, and they too have traveled to different parts of Asia to play games and to make exchanges. And so the idea is that if you don't give them a chance today, tomorrow you have to build more jails to lock them up. That would not make sense. Therefore, we continue with these works to do our part in Brazil. And the third part will be Philippines. Okay, when these ideas about building a 4th university, among the 3 that was already very difficult, objections arose. They're saying it's already taking up a lot of our effort. Why build another one in Philippines? Okay. But anyway, the master pushed on and said, however much you can do, just keep trying. And so what happened was in Guang College in Philippines, we had a very wonderful retired minister from education. She actually reached out to all the remote islands. She wrote to 1,000 high schools and recruited their top students who came into Manila. So there were children who grew up in places without water and electricity. They herded cattle every day, and the only thing they had to do was to look after their younger brothers and sisters and nothing. Okay? And when they came into Manila, they realized that they now can try to put their talent into use. You might discover one thing about Filipinos is their extreme talent in performing arts. Almost everyone in Philippines could sing beautifully, right? You say a word to turn it into a song. Okay? So at Guang College, we offer performance arts as well as theater programs. So when they come in, not only do they acquire a professional skill, another thing they do at the temple is that they pretty much live the style of a Buddhist temple. So they wake up at 5 o'clock, they do morning chanting in Mandarin in the morning, and they do evening chanting at 9 o'clock in the evening. So they learn 2 languages, and during the day they continue their studies. Okay? Best teachers are invited from different parts of the world. This is a lady from Juilliard who came in to teach children, the students, body language. And so I remember seeing them in the first year when they first arrived in Manila with all this uncertainty and fear. But they grew up with much more confidence in their eyes. They smiled more. And when they came back to Foguangshan, they actually started to change us too. Whenever we saw them, we just felt this sense of joy because they were always so positive. Even when they're just moving a set of chairs, they will be singing and dancing across the room. I would say, oh, can you please help us move 3 tables? You would see them jumping, singing all the way to the bottom of the stairs. You just can't help not smile or sing with them. Okay? So these are the type of joy and potentials that lie in so many different lives that we too can touch just by contributing a little bit. Okay? And so by the 3rd year, they also got more opportunities to visit China as well as Taiwan. And in this particular event, it was live in Chan last year. That's when we invite about 1,500 college students to Foguangshan every summer. We spend 5 days together on lessons and seminars about Dharma and modern day issues. And so on the final evening, when Venerable Master spoke to this group of college students, Lady Anne, a 3rd year student, got up and said to the Master, first of all, she thanked the Master for giving her an opportunity for education. And second, she said, I promise you that in 10 years' time, all of us, the graduates, will promote humanistic Buddhism and world peace. We will do everything we can with what we have learned here to contribute to world peace. Okay? So that was a very touching moment. And you would see how much they grow and how much hope and opportunity that can be instilled into a young mind when they are given a chance to explore the world and life. Okay? So that was an amazing moment. I was there. I almost couldn't continue translating because what Venerable Master said after that was, if I don't live to see that day, I'll come back in my next life to see you. So that's why she cried. You see all these kids down there going, oh. They were so touched by the Master's comments. And you will see, I think it's like a very honest and beautiful exchange between a young girl and this 90-year-old man about what both of them can do in life. Okay? And so we would see with these 3 examples, although a 90-year-old man could no longer walk and see, he's still able to reach out to so many lives. Okay? And now I have 10 more minutes left. I would like to go back to my story about my father and me. Okay, so this was in 2015. You can see by then I made peace with my dad. He was willing to come and see Venerable Master. Okay, how did that happen? Okay, I became renounced in 2000. And it took me about 2 years before I could begin talking to my dad as a monastic. He couldn't even look at me in the eyes. He just found it weird because I shave my head and wear this Kung Fu robe, shoes with holes. Okay? But slowly he convinced himself to come and see me every once a few years. But whenever he saw me, he never said much. He just kind of went, oh, how are you? I hope you're doing okay. And then 2 hours later, he would leave the temple. He didn't even want to stay in the temple. Okay? So that went on for a couple of years, but I slowly learned to share more of my life with my dad. Until the year 2013. Okay? I guess closer to the later 10 years of our lives, Venerable Master started to spend more time in mainland China, okay? Leaving me in a crisis. When you go to China, you don't need translation. Okay? I cannot translate from Chinese into Chinese for you. So what am I going to do? Although I never, voiced my worry to my master, okay, suddenly one day he turned to me again. Whenever somebody stares at you for more than 30 seconds without saying anything, you realize something is terrible. Yeah. He says, oh, you should start going to all these English-speaking countries to give talks. Okay. And then I turned to him and said, but I don't know how to give talks. I'm a terrible, terrible speaker, and I have no Dharma. I don't know enough about Buddhism to start teaching. And then he pointed to his whole shelf of books and he said, all of these are yours. Take them, use them, and then share them. They will support you. Okay. That was how he gave me courage. And therefore I started to try to give Dharma talks first in Philippines and Singapore, and then slowly reaching out to other parts of the world. And I guess those days were quite important to me as well, because I realized from then on I have to rely on myself when I'm on stage. Okay. Before, as a translator, I just need to sit there and wait for him to say something, and I regurgitate it into a second language and I'm done. I'm okay. I don't need to carry the audience. But once I start to give a talk, it's a whole different story, isn't it? I have to make sure that the entire talk is conducted smoothly and that I tend to my audience. Okay? And so as I continue to learn, I believe that the audience has helped me to grow a lot throughout these past 10 years. Helping me to learn how to connect and reach out to you. Okay? And so as I continued to do all of these tasks, it was in 2013 when I was in Singapore. I was still on stage when a phone call came. It was from my mom. Okay? And again, she called me and she said, you better come home. There's something wrong with your dad. Therefore, I asked her, what went wrong? She goes, when your dad was driving, for some reason, his whole car just crashed into the side of the road. He just lost control of the steering wheel. And when he was told to do a checkup, he discovered this 13-centimeter brain tumor on the left of his head. My father is a very healthy man. He doesn't smoke. He drinks only a little bit. He plays golf every week. He has no improper habits. So he had been very healthy all his life until when he turned 70. He was then diagnosed with this brain tumor that could paralyze him. And so he began to worry. He was very, very scared. Okay? He didn't know what to do. Okay? I guess sometimes when a crisis arises, it means it's an opportunity for betterment as well. 危机就是转机. And so as he began to get scared, a lot of my mother's friends from the temples popped up. They began to come to our houses and telling my dad, don't worry about this. I know a good doctor. Okay? Don't worry about this. I have experiences. I'm going to show you how to prepare for surgery. Okay? I know what to buy before the surgery starts, so don't worry. I can drive you to the hospital on the day. Okay? We had a lot of friends who came in. All these friends that my mom made while she was serving at the temple. And even the monastics came in to conduct blessing ceremonies for my dad. Okay? And therefore, on the day I finally arrived in Australia, I actually had a lot of talks with him because that was about 2 weeks after he was diagnosed with the brain tumor. So he had shed enough tears. He had lost enough sleep over the past 2 weeks. He was tired. And then we sat down. I discovered why my father was still a man of blessing. Why? Why do I say that? Okay. Usually when misfortune befalls a person, we would tend to become resentful. We would try to find somebody to blame for our misfortune. Okay? And so usually being rather negative, I thought that's what my dad would do. But instead of doing that, he spent 2 weeks thinking about how he has spent his life with my mom, sometimes making things very difficult, humiliating her, and stopping her from coming to the temple. And so by the end of the 2 weeks, he came to my mom and apologized to her, something which he had never done. Okay, so instead of turning to anger, my father turned to repentance. And when I returned to Sydney, as we sat down, he actually apologized to me. He said, I'm very sorry for not being there for you when you most needed me. I'm sorry for not being a good father. And I said to him, no, Dad, you brought us to Australia. You gave us the best education, and when I was being a pain in your neck, you didn't really break your connection with me. You supported me somehow. Right? And so I guess those long nights of talk, I think the apologies and the acceptance actually allowed us to reconcile for our differences. And he actually let go of his anger for us not obliging him, not fulfilling his expectations in us. Yeah, so he felt better. He felt better on the day that these venerables from Nantian Temple came to conduct the blessings for him. I actually turned to him and said, before you used to almost break the statues when you see them. You used to be so angry. But now, are you willing to join your palms? Give yourself to the blessings of Amitabha when the monastics are chanting for you, so that the Buddha will protect you and make sure that the surgery goes smoothly. So he thought about it quietly, and he nodded his head. He joined his palms and lowered his head when Venerable Manka sprinkled, the great Dharani water over his head. And I asked him, how do you feel now? He says, I'm actually willing to accept the fact that when I think of this warm and comforting light radiated by Amitabha, it could actually make me feel more safe and peaceful. Okay? So he began to accept a faith that my mom and I had chosen across the past 20 years. And he started to see the benefit of all of these. He was actually quite surprised with how many friends my mother has from the temple. So we would tell her, it's all because my mother has been developing good affinities throughout these past years. That's why, you've got all these people to help you now. So he kind of nodded his head, yeah, it makes sense now. Okay? Yeah, so I stayed with him until the day of his surgery. It all went really, really well. I still remember when he was in the ICU, before I had to go, he suddenly turned to me and said to me, I think there's something that I've realized now. It's not too bad to have a Buddhist nun for a daughter after all. It's actually not too bad to have a renounced daughter. Yeah. And then, therefore, we reconciled. Okay. And so the surgery went really well in the fact that the surgeon was able to remove the tumor without hurting any part of his brain. So he's able to talk and walk as normal. One major change, though, he doesn't get angry as much. So I would tell him, it's like your karma has peeled off you. Now you are a new man, right? You start anew. So think about your second chance and try to enjoy your life now. Be joyful and be patient. And so now he often visits the temple. He's willing to volunteer, and he's much more gentle and happier around my mother. And so I think all of these years of hard work, done by my mom has really paid off. And so I think really in thinking about all of these, I have learned from the experience that we should all trust in the path we have chosen. Stay on that path, be strong, don't give up, and all good things will happen in good time, as long as you stay strong to your faith. Okay? And so that is my story. And what am I doing now? Okay, and so while other than doing workshops and talks around the world, I also have another task given to me by Fu Guangshan, that is to translate the Fu Guang Dictionary of Buddhism into English. Okay. We understand that when we want to learn a new idea or a philosophy, a tool is almost indispensable. Okay. And for the past 30 years, we at Fu Guangshan have been attempting to provide an English version, an English edition of this. We began by handing this set to one man so he could translate it. Okay. 5 years later, he disappeared. The project failed. We tried again with a small group of monastics at Fu Guangshan with very limited knowledge. 2 years later, the project got suspended. Okay. Until in 2015, when we finally realized that we need a good team. We need a team that can provide a tool that suits to the diversity of our Fu Guangshan community, so everyone can make use of this learning tool. And so what we are doing now, the strategy we're approaching, is to learn from Master Xuanzang's way of translating. Master Xuanzang actually had 800 translators in his court. Okay. Some were responsible for decoding the Sanskrit or the Indian language. Some were responsible for translating that into Chinese. Some were responsible for just recording whatever the translators said. And some just had to keep copying this information again and again and again. So you have 800 people. Okay. But you might discover, because it has such a wide range of professionals that are needed, therefore we need to recruit as many people as possible. So this is the team we have today. Okay, after 2 years of preparation, we now have a professor from America, okay, a group of translators from Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, Canada, and both coasts of America, as well as Philippines. The professor is American. We have a PR who's from Belgium, Arthur, the son of Francis, who's helping us recruit. And then we also have American and French translators who come in to help us decode the languages. This is the kind of diversity we have at Guang right now. And we continue to continue with our endeavor to try to translate the dictionary into English. And so teamwork is definitely the way to go. And we hope that with concerted effort, we will be able to complete this project within the next 6 years. And so that this wonderful, wonderful tool could be held in your hands as soon as possible. So you know your faith in a much more detailed and better way. That is our hope and goal for the near future. Okay. But I'm also very grateful for Venerable Manchen and Venerable Miao for arranging my trip here this time. We've just spent the weekend running a workshop for our English Dharma teachers. Okay. Although we come from a Chinese origin in Guang, but as we come to different parts of the world, our community consists of members from a diverse background. And anything we have in common will not only fall behind one thing, that is the English language. And so we had a lot of fun this weekend. We tried the different tools and techniques to how we can deliver and share the Dharma in the English language. It had turned out to be quite effective, and I think we're starting to see hope as to how we can develop further approaches to really share the Dharma with the people of the United Kingdom. Okay. And so there are many, many things that we can do as a very diverse community. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity and so glad to see that my time here has been effective. It wasn't really just a tourist visit anymore. And so hopefully in the future we will continue to see the growth of this English-speaking community so we can allow this home to grow bigger and to share the wonderful joys of Dharma with more people. Okay, so again, very, very grateful. And so I would like to end my talk here. So thank you so much for listening. I hope it has not been all that boring. Thank you very much.
I'm sure you will agree that was definitely a very exciting and inspiring talk by Venerable Miao Guang. We saw lots of nodding heads, wiping tears, and laughter. So should we give her another warm round of applause? I'm sure there are lots of people here that are very enthusiastic and eager to ask Venerable Miao Guang any questions. So we'd like to open up to questions.
Sure.
Everyone's still in awe.
Greetings, Honorable. I'm quite interested in the Guang dictionary translation project. So I wonder how, can you tell us more in detail like how is it executed?
Okay.
Is there any way that people can contribute to it?
Okay. Thank you very much for your showing interest in the Guang dictionary. Okay. In the process of translating this set of dictionary, not only did we realize the large number of manpower we need, we've also discovered one very important thing, that no one is useless in this project. In other words, anyone who is interested can contribute in one way or the other, depending on your expertise. Before we realized this, when we reached out to translators, the way we recruited them was, oh, can you be a translator for the project? And that scared away many people. They would say, oh, I'm not an expert in Buddhist studies. I don't know Chinese word that well. I don't know English that well, so I cannot translate for you. Okay? But as we designed the process of the dictionary, we discovered that before you start translating, you need to build up on a lot of database. Because all the translators were coming to us and say, okay, you want us to translate Buddhist terms, but do you have a set of dictionaries that I can rely on when I translate this? That has all the terms I need to see in English so I can translate the dictionary. Right? So I thought to myself, okay, if I did, I wouldn't be reaching out to you. We'd be done with the dictionary by now. Okay? But then I realized that's their need. We need to equip them with sufficient tools before they can work effectively and contribute to the project. And so we started to collect about 30 or 40 dictionaries in Chinese, English, Pali, Sanskrit, Thai, Mongolian, French, German, Japanese, and Korean. Okay, so many different languages. And then what we did was we reorganized all the similar entries onto one single page and scanned them. Okay, so just in that process, we need people who can collect data for us. So if you are a patient person, if you're patient and very, very detailed, then you can help us collect this information. So you don't need to be a translator. Okay? If you're a computer engineer who tells us, okay, I can save you thousands of minutes by simplifying the work process. You no longer have to look up the same piece of information all the time. You can help us. You can help us develop these softwares. Okay? If you're a good translator, by all means, join us. We need you. But if your Chinese is better than your English, you can help us decipher and explain these entries in simpler Chinese. Okay? And if your English is better than your Chinese, you can help us translate the Chinese into English. Okay? And now, if you don't read Chinese, but you're a native English speaker, you're a great editor, then you can help us edit these translated entries to help us make sure that we are rendering a dictionary that is user-friendly to native English speakers. Okay? And if you say, oh, I'm good at none of this, but I have great people skills, I can help you recruit, I can help you, talk to them, when they're in trouble, I can help you, settle down and so on, then by all means you can come and be a recruiter. Okay? And there was a lady who came to me after hearing this and said, oh, I'm good at none of this, but I still want to help. I can help come to the temple and make sure that every meeting and workshop is convened smoothly by providing all the coffee and biscuit and candies that you need so that your translators are actually happy. Then I can help. Okay? So in other words, we discovered, when conditions come together, you are only one small piece of the whole picture. No one can ever fill up the whole picture. And so I believe, having described these different tasks, if there's anything that belongs, from these categories that you feel that you can do, by all means, please come to us. And we continue to hold these workshops. And we discovered that in the process of doing so, this professor, who's American, in the middle, he reads canonical texts in Chinese better than the rest of us. Yeah, he's able to analyze the grammatical and linguistic and historical background of every single Buddhist term better than any of us native Chinese speakers. And so we learned so much from him. And we also learned a lot of interesting techniques to simplify the translation process. For example, we now have a standardized system. So you might discover a traditional dictionary software works like this. You read, you see a word, so you pull out the software, you enter the term, and then you read it. Right? Now we've turned it into a pop-up function so that you just need to mouse over the term, and the English translation will pop up in front of you. And you can click on another button and say, replace this Chinese word with a standardized term. So we're starting to refine the translation process. Therefore, what we have done, you won't have to do it, you won't have to repeat it again. We're able to quickly translate the main terms in a sentence into English and then leave it up to you to rearrange it into proper English. And so that would largely shorten the time required in the process of translation with greater accuracy and greater enjoyment. Okay? So these are just some of the things we have begun to dig out and discover now. And so you might imagine this dictionary is becoming something no one has ever seen before. Dr. Lancaster refers to this project as the cutting-edge Buddhist tool, language tool, that the world is about to see within the next 6 years. No one else can compare. Why? Because the Guang dictionary in Chinese itself is already so comprehensive, very professional. It was compiled by a group of professors. And so we now just need to render an English edition of that. So with content, with technology, with creativity, and with vision, we truly hope that in the making of this wonderful project, we can involve as many of you as possible to benefit thousands and millions of people in the world. Okay. So come and see me after the talk. Yeah, you can definitely contribute. Thank you so much. Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions for Venerable Miao Guang?
Can I ask, how did you get to the role of being Xingyin Da's translator?
Okay. How did I become Master Xingyun's translator? I have a short version for you by karma. Well, I would give it largely to the conditions that were given, 因缘具足, because I never thought I would be the translator. And to be honest, when Venerable Manchen set out to nurture a few talented translators, I was by no means close to the top. There were 4 or 5 other young adults who came from a similar background, who spoke better Chinese and spoke better English than me. They were much more reactive, they were much more agile than I was. Okay? But the thing is, when you have more than one options in life, you tend to drift off. You tend to lessen your ability to focus on one thing because you don't want to miss out on any opportunity to be great in life. So all of these young adult division presidents, vice presidents, who were much more outstanding translators than me, eventually drifted off to pursue their career as lawyers, as CEOs, or as mothers, leaving me still hanging around the temple and leaving Venerable Manchen with no choice. Right? It's like looking around, who can translate? Only you. So what I'm trying to say is I hang around. What I do is I cherished one opportunity that was given to me by those who trusted me and believed that I can try to make a difference. And I gave it my best. I focused and focused. I spent most of my time, my university days at the temple. So while all of my classmates were having fun, okay, enjoying their times with their girlfriend and boyfriend, traveling the world, pursuing a career, I believed this was what I could do. Because when I'm doing this, I'm able to reach out to so many more people. Yeah. So in those uni days, whenever there was an event, you would see people coming from different parts of Australia, then different parts of the world. And they would tell me, if you ever come to this city, give me a call. You can stay at my house. I will show you around. You don't have to spend a single dollar. I made so many friends. I connected with so many parts of the world. I guess if you want me to explain, maybe, I simply held on to this vision and this dream that I can make a difference. And then I just let the rest of it, just let nature take its course. And then Master Xingyun came, he talked to me, he invited me back to Taiwan, and then, everything just rolled on. Yeah. But I would say it wasn't an easy path, because you feel so alone at certain parts in your life. Right? When everyone's having fun, when everyone's kind of heading towards a certain direction in life, they seem to be achieving something, and I'm still hanging around as a temple volunteer who is single with no directions in life. I used to feel so miserable. Yeah. But I held on to this dream, to become better at what I'm doing. And I guess, like as I've said before, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will never turn against you. They will carry you further. Okay? And so by all means, again, if you believe in something, if you really enjoy doing something, okay, be persistent, stay strong, despite your parents' objections or, unhappiness, because you need to find the ability to tell them that you are indeed on the right path. Okay? Whatever it is that you do. Yeah. So I would say, when you ask me, what is the secret to success? The secret to success is not to give up halfway through. The secret to success is to always make sure that you complete the journey you have embarked on. Only the one who lasts till the end, only the one who crosses the finish line will be closer to success. Okay, so be persistent. Good luck. Okay.
Hi, Venerable. It's a privilege to have you here today, obviously. What is your advice for parents with young children and ensuring that, because obviously our exposure is just coming here once every Sundays, and I find that sometimes it's a bit of a struggle throughout the week just to keep the children just to keep teaching them Dharma. Sometimes it's a bit of a struggle as a parent. So I just want to know what your advice would be.
Okay. Well, for one thing, children are children. Right? They have this particular wonderful innocence that they are very, very honest to you about how they feel, what they want and what they don't want. And I think in the process of growing up, you really don't feel like you're learning Dharma. It's more about what you enjoy doing as a child. Okay, that's how I see myself. If my mom was to tell me to come to the temple to attend a Dharma lesson, I would have made sure that I resorted to every means to escape. But what she told me was, when you go to the temple, go to visit your friends. And then by the time I was 18, she said, you should go and discover yourself. Okay? And leave the rest to these young boys and girls. Okay? You might be surprised with how mature these minds could be. They're able to process that information and environment in such a logical and wonderful way. As long as they're in this environment, they will remember what they learned from here. And when they go home, maybe every once in a while, I think what's important in a parent is to kind of lead them on with that positivity they have learned from the temple. Okay. I had this friend who went to the temple with me. His parents were so positive. Every day when he went home, right, his mom would say, "Oh, how was your day, dear? I hope you enjoyed your time." Right? But when I went home, my mom was like, "Okay, do your homework. Did you improve on your marks?" Right? And then I would try to walk away, try to walk out of that situation. I wondered why I wasn't able to really enjoy family time with my parents. I guess she was expecting that I could change for the better. Right? But I hope that, if my parents were as understanding and positive, as my friend, I believe that these young boys and girls will be reminded of, the wonderful moments and the great values they have learned in the temple. Yeah, so again, let nature take its course. And I think sometimes, spending time with them, hearing them out, may also help you find a way for them to always be reminded of the Dharma. Okay, but think about how you grew up. Think about how you would love to kind of learn the Dharma, in these manners, and perhaps you know your daughter better, you might find a way for her. Okay? But by all means, we have a great family here. Yeah, I was so touched by the boys and the girls who were making these egg tarts downstairs, or vegan egg tarts, right? And they were learning the value of gratitude. They were learning ways to say thank you to their parents. And so combining both, give your children time, and slowly everything will be like a seed that starts to sprout in their mind. Okay. All the best. Okay.
Say something?
Anybody else want to ask some questions?
Or say something, not next question. Come here.
What is it like to be next to Master Xing?
You gave me the egg tart at lunchtime, right? She was the girl, right? I felt this fantastic warmth and kindness when you gave me that egg tart. You don't know me, okay? We never met, but you were willing to share this wonderful gift with me. So that kindness and warmth which I have felt in you is the same kind of kindness and warmth that I have felt beside the Master. So thank you so much. What's going on right now? What did I do? I was only talking about the dictionary. I think she's very touched with her little girl, the Bodhi garden seedlings.
Yeah, but Rose asked any questions. I think there's no questions, but only contribution. Because some stories, this is the first time I want to hear this kind of story about Master.
Yes, I have to pinch myself too. Yeah. What's going on?
Anyway, just like we think we will make the general conclusion discussion for this morning. I said, please don't admire what's so success, how successful Miao Guang. Just like we have heard, she works so hard and also contributes her time and to everything. And I think our kids, our children in temple, they should have also the joyful life from now. Even they are so maybe younger than, some of them are younger than Miao came to the temple. But I think today is very important for every one of us and everybody, and also especially for our kids, because they are so young and have their wonderful life, and they should know what can they do for their, not the rest of their life, but the future life. and our hope, maybe we don't have to, just like our master said, if I cannot see this life, I will come back next time. We can do better, and we can do and contribute our talent maybe, or our goodness for the whole human beings. And that's what our master teaches us, humanistic Buddhism. Okay, I say it.
So I'm the only one on stage. You guys are leaving me on stage, okay? But anyway, to close off, I would like to say you will always find a friend in the temple. Okay, so whenever you feel alone and hopeless, come to the temple. And if the monastics are too busy to talk to you, the Buddha will always be here. Okay, talk to the Buddha as if you talk to your heart. Okay, this is the most single moment when you can find the strength within yourself. Okay, so stay hopeful, stay positive, stay awake. Okay, all the best. Thank you very much.